This Thursday, we'll start out with Special Housing Committee, chaired by Ms. Honeycutt.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Special Housing Committee agenda meeting. I am chair along with Reverend Middleton, Mr. Grabowski, Mr. Worman, and of course the chair sits on all committees. I'm going to first ask for approval of minutes of January 25th, 24. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Mrs. Durant, there you are. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Durant for an update on our future, Housing Our Future initiatives.
Great, thank you, Ms. Honeycutt. That was helpful. As we go through this, I want to lay the groundwork. Before you be hearing briefly from me about the history of some of the most recent actions you all have taken over the last year. Primarily, can you hear?
Yep, you're back on.
Am I back?
Yes.
Okay, hang on. I've never been told I was quiet. What I was saying is, over the last year, you all have exercised a lot of actions related to the housing plan and the things we've been working on for the last 6 years. Sometimes individually those items are hard to remember, so I'm going to take a minute and give you sort of the overview to refresh everyone's memory on all the actions you've taken. Then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Smalls for a quarterly update on the actions that her department has taken, as well as some specific new programs and expanded programs. Then we're going to talk with Mr. Davis about land banking, and then finally we're going to close it out with accommodations tax. So there are going to be about 5 different programs you're going to hear about tonight, but we're going to start with just a brief overview. And I want to start, like I mentioned, taking it back to the January of 23. When you approved our first initiative that started gap financing and infill development. With that, there were 5 gap projects and 2 infill that resulted in, or will result in, 337 new units. This gap and infill financing was available because of the ARPA funding that we received in 21. Jump forward to 26, you all will recall in 22, you approved $3 million for the critical home repair program because part of our initiative is keeping people in their homes. Because of some of the increasing cost, Community Development came back and said we needed to increase some of the Sustainability Institute's individual allowances because the items that they were having to do to homes were costing more than they had anticipated, so you took that action. In May of 23, the culmination of 2 years' worth of work on the Housing Our Future plan, which started in 2020, was awarded a contract in 21. You adopted the plan and you gave staff 2 very clear directives to continue to work on. One was identify funding that could help to fund and create a trust fund, and also to work on the land banking priorities that were enclosed in the Housing Our Future plan. So items 1A and 3B from our strategic plan for the Housing Our Future plan. I will pause and say that everything that you're going to hear tonight and everything about the new programs are all couched in the terms of the Housing Our Future plan that you all adopted last year. In September, mentioning the critical home repair program, you increased that award by $1 million and brought it from $3 million up to $4 million. In 27, you awarded the gap financing. It was an additional award that you awarded to a rural project on Johns Island who had unanticipated increased cost for low-income seniors, a program that actually will be having a groundbreaking next week. You also, you approved at that point, Ms. Smalls had the ability to reopen another round of gap financing and infill, which you'll be hearing more about tonight. So you agreed to allocate the balance of the $20 million, which was $8.5 million, to solicit new applications for additional gap and infill programming. Then you, Lance, I shouldn't look at the screen. And then you also asked staff to continue to work on, and that is some of the things we'll talk about, the revolving fund. You all will remember a couple of years ago, you chose not to increase taxes because of the harm that it could bring to renters. Because obviously increasing taxes, landlords would pass those expenses on to tenants, and we didn't want that. So we started working on initiatives that would provide other funding that would not further burden our renters in our community. And then in October, you did two things with both the Just Home and the Low Barrier Housing Collective. And while they are programs that came from different places, the MacArthur Grant and then the collective for all of the homeless providers in Charleston, you allocated additional money to stabilize and enhance those programs, which all help mitigate homelessness and the cycle of homelessness in our community. And then finally, in December, you gave third reading to an initiative that we've been working on for quite a while, which was the multi-county park, which would allow us to use special source revenue credit bonds and special source revenue credit and fee in lieu of taxes to incentivize developers to bring in more affordable units here. I will take a moment to just mention the next step in that we are working on, that you'll be hearing about in the probably coming month, is the policy that will support that ordinance, and that is the uniform tax exemption policy, and that's what will create the structure for how we will do tax abatements for those developers that are bringing those units into the community. Now, just because words don't mean a lot, I thought it would be a nice time to take a moment and take a look at what your money and your initiatives have done. Now, Ms. Smalls is going to talk in more detail, but I just want you to take a glance at what's going on in our community. Archer School down on the east side, it is an adaptive reuse of a vacant school along with additional units for 89 apartments for seniors with an income average of 60% AMI. You have Northbridge Townhomes, just about 5 minutes away from here, 20 townhomes for home ownership. You have Esau Jenkins Village, which is the rural project on Johns Island that the groundbreaking will be occurring next week. You have an architect's rendition of what that will look like there. You have two additional, let me pause there and say, it is monumental that the staff were able to close, in conjunction with the Community Loan Fund, 3 huge gap financing projects this year. The loan fund would say, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, Ms. McKetty would say it's unheard of. She had no idea we were going to be able to move that much, that fast on those kind of big initiatives. The two that are coming up next are 275 Hugie and 573 Meeting. Again, all programs that you all have approved. Staff and the loan fund are working with the developers to move it to the next level to ensure our investment, but also to achieve the outcome. Now, this is just a reminder because, again, Ms. Smalls will talk about this in detail. In addition to these big developments, there are a lot of smaller nonprofits that are doing work in our community and have been for 20 years. We would not be where we are with all of our HUD money had these nonprofits not been partnering with us to build and renovate houses. So you've got just a few images here. You will remember that Charleston County Council was gracious enough to allow us to purchase 18 homes from the Housing Authority when they were at risk of going to market. It was a program that we had never endeavored to do before, and we had to create the program as we went because we just knew we needed to secure them before they were sold to market. Ms. Smalls will be giving you an update on where they are with those projects. Just a glimpse at some of the projects that Netnoya and F.A. Johnson and CRC are building in our community. These are a direct result of funding that you all have approved. Critical home repair, again, just a visual glimpse of some of the work that's being done. Another picture of some rehab work. Again, these are units that turn out to be affordable, either for home ownership or for rent, for people making income somewhere between 30% and 120% of AMI. Most of these, under the HUD funds, they are associated with an 80% AMI and below. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Smalls, and she's going to talk first about just the updates in the last quarter, as well as 3 programs. At the end of each section, we're going to have a series of council actions that we're going to ask you to consider. And then I'll come back up in the end.
Good afternoon, Council. As Christine stated, I am here today to provide an update on our affordable housing programs for the fourth quarter, but I also wanted to take a few minutes to step back and actually look at all of the accomplishments of 2023 and give you a visual so you can actually see what's going on today in the construction. The ARPA-funded programs that I am going to talk about today include the Critical Home Repair Program, the Charleston Homes Program, gap financing and infill development, the Wells and Septic Tank Program. I will also update you on the accomplishments from our urban entitlement programs, and those programs include the Emergency Repair Program and the Home Investment Program. So those are the items we're going to talk about today. So let's get started with gap financing and the infill program. This first program, as Christine reminded you, is the program where you allocated $20 million in ARPA funds for this program, and it's designed to bridge the gap, the financial gap for developers so that they can bring more affordable homes to the county. Last quarter, Council expanded the program by implementing our first pilot for the revolving loan program, and we did that last quarter also. During the fourth quarter of 2023, staff implemented the second phase of the program, and we also executed the Esau Jenkins Village contract. And of course, construction continued with the Archer School program and the Bridge North. So today, I'm not sure how many of you have seen those two projects, but I wanted you to get a glimpse of what's going on.
Very excited that we are going to have residents moving in, hopefully the 1st of March. We are currently pre-leasing. We're taking applications and deposits. So our residents are lining up to move in. We're very excited. Well, we couldn't have gotten here without the contribution of Charleston County. So very thankful for Charleston County and how they handled their ARPA funding.
We're excited to be underway with Northbridge Townhomes. As you see, we have all 4 buildings up and going. Exciting to see the progress in just a little over 3 months.
Wow.
Since we were here with our groundbreaking.
Great news. And when do you expect the first person to move in?
We expect the first deliveries to be in the spring of this year, so we're hopeful in the next another 3 months from now we should be completing the building right behind us here and moving the first residents in.
Great.
I want to also take this time to thank Charleston County for their ARPA grant that's been helpful in keeping these prices affordable over here in this community. Thank you.
So those are our 2 large projects that we started or we implemented last year, the construction on them. And as you can tell, in less than 1 year, we are moving individuals into the Archer School apartments and Northbridge. They'll start moving people in the spring of this year. That's a pretty quick turnaround, which is what Mr. Rant was saying. Now, what can you expect for us in the first quarter and moving on? The groundbreaking ceremony for Esau Jenkins projects will be on the 15th of February. The staff in my department, we will continue executing the programs, the contracts. As Christine said, there are 2 left from phase 1. That's the project on Meeting Street and the project on Hugie Street. So we will continue and hopefully have those contracts completed by the end of this quarter, first quarter in 2024. The other thing is tonight I am going to ask council to approve the award for phase 2 of this program. In phase 2, we have 2 grants totaling $700, and we would like you to award 2 loans, and this will be the first 2 loans, well, the second and third loan programs or projects that we're going to do in the pilot program, and those 2 loans total $2 million. In the second phase, we did receive 4 other applications. We're still reviewing those applications. We had more questions, and before we brought them to council, we just wanted to look through them and make sure they were strong applications before we made a decision or a recommendation on whether to award to those 4. We do plan to open the final phase of the gap financing program next month in March. We are going to do this phase a little different. Earlier in the first 2 phases, we accepted applications for a period of time, for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and then we would grade those, evaluate those applications, and then we would bring them to council. The way we're going to do the program now is it's going to be open until we allocate or award the remaining $6 million. So every month we will review or evaluate the applications that we have received, and if there are any that we feel we can bring to council, we will bring those to council. I'm thinking this is going to help us move this along a little faster than we have been doing with the gap financing, because of course we have to have these projects allocated by the end of 2024, December. The next project we're going to talk about, our program, is our Charleston Home Program. As
Ms. Mull,
Mr.
before you
Rand,
move on, do you want a motion on each of these as we go,
I
or at
think
the
it may
end?
be easier if I do the entire presentation,
Perfect.
and then at the end, we can do a movement to accept the actions.
Okay.
Okay. So for the second program, we're going to talk about Charleston Homes. As Christine told you, or Mr. Rant reminded you, those are the 16 homes that we purchased from the Charleston Housing and Redevelopment Authority. And we are trying to get nonprofits and for-profits to renovate the homes. And then once the homes are renovated, we will deed the property over to them. Last Tuesday, you approved 2 properties. You did the third reading for 2 properties, and I think you approved the properties, but we didn't get a chance to tell you about those 2 programs and what they're going to do with the properties. So I'd like you to take just a
Excited
minute to
about the
listen.
grant that we received from the County of Charleston of the Marginal Roadhouse, because it is going to be a phenomenal boost to both our capacity and our effectiveness. So we are going to create a 4-bedroom sort of permanent apartment complex for our AmeriCorps members. So we're expecting to be completed by July 1st, presuming that we're able to start on February 1st.
Can you tell us a little about your plans?
Absolutely. So this is a great location, some amazing trees, but the house itself is falling apart, especially on the inside. So our proposal is to demolish this house and haul it away and rebuild a new single-family home in its place. It'll be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath on the same septic system that we're using, and it'll kind of fit in with this whole neighborhood. So it'll be a home ownership project where we'll go through the normal habitat channel, which means that the homeowner and all of our volunteers will help build the house, and at the end of it they'll get the title to the house and it'll be their house with a mortgage. And this is just an amazing opportunity.
I totally. So with the 2 programs that we will be able to do, the 2 projects, we will have people living in those homes by the summer of this year. I did hear someone question the boat. There wasn't a deal where you get a house, renovate a house, get a boat. It didn't work that way. When we arrived for filming, the boat was there. We have since found the owner has moved it. We searched around and we found the owner, and they have moved the boat. So, but moving forward, during the 4th quarter of 2023, staff received I think it was 6 applications, and we've evaluated them. And tonight, I will ask council to approve the awards for 2 more programs, 2 more properties. And just so you'll know, in early spring of this year, we will do phases 3 and 4. Again, we're trying to fast track things a little faster than we have been doing them, so we're going to start back to back, opening up more phases. There are 2 more phases remaining. Next, we get to the critical home repair project. As you recall, or as Mr. Rant reminded you, you initially approved $3 million to fund this program, and this program was to assist senior citizens by repairing their homes. The program was so successful, in September you allocated or approved an additional $1 million for this program so that we could further this initiative. In 2023, there were various improvements that were made, but in general, the improvements include roof replacement, mold remediation, HVAC installations, pest control, weatherization, and then we, of course, improved handicap accessibility. But thanks to your support, we were able to make 122 home repairs, which is not bad at all. There was one resident, a senior citizen, after the repair of her home, she said, thank you for giving me my home back. So those words alone let us know that this program is successful. In 2024, staff will continue repairing the homes. As you know, in phase 3, we were repairing homes for what we considered the most vulnerable, senior citizens 75 and over. There is approximately $900 left for phase 3, and we will continue with that. But in phase 4, the final phase, you allocated $1 million, and we will open it up, and this will include all applications regardless of age. So we will turn the way we're doing the program. We're going to change the program. We're going to pivot in 2024 on the final phase with the last $1 million for this project. There's one other council action that goes along with critical home repair. During the 4th quarter, council asked us or tasked us with looking at doing a forgivable lien. Because the cost of repairing houses has gone up, it's just skyrocketed in the last couple of years. You wanted to know how you could protect the county's investment in these home repairs. So today I have a request for approval of our forgivable lien policy. There are basically 5 components in this lien. First, and I think probably the most important, is that there will never be an adverse effect on heirs' property. And if an owner of a property dies, there isn't anything that's going to happen to that owner. We will only consider the lien when they go to sell the house. And I think that's the most important part, because we want homeowners to understand that Charleston County isn't trying to take your home. Sometimes that's what's considered, or people think of when they think of a lien, but we just want to protect our investment. The second part of the policy is that it's for 10 years. I looked at different policies around the country, and they're different years, but 10 years seem to be a sweet spot. And so we're going to do ours, or I'm recommending a 10-year lien, and we're only going to do projects that are between $20,000 to $30,000. If you recall, the maximum amount that we can put in a home based on guidance from council is $30,000. So the lien, if we repair a home and it's less than $30 or $20,000, we won't consider it as part of this program. But homes that fall between, the repairs that fall between $20,000 and $30,000, we will look at. The third thing to remember about this is that the liens are going to be a subordinate. And what that basically means is that if they have other liens that they need to pay, or if they have taxes that they need to pay at the time of the sale, and at the end there they do not have any more funds to pay the county, it automatically becomes a forgivable lien. We're not going to go after them and insist that they repay the county for the lien if they didn't have funds to pay for it. The final phase part of the, the fourth part of the component of the program is that the lien will decrease 10% every year. So if you have a $30 worth of repair in your home and you decide to sell the home at the 5th year, then you would only owe $15,000 of the lien, because it's going to decrease 10% each year. Finally, all recaptured funds from this program, they're going to go back into exactly what we're trying to do, which is to further the initiative of our Housing Our Future plan. So this is another way to continue a revolving source of income. The next program we'll talk about is our well septic tank program. Just to give you a reminder of that program, because I think when you think of houses, you think of building houses, you think of repairing houses, but the other part of affordable housing is preserving the stock that we have. And that's what the repairing is doing. But with the wells and septic program, if you do not have access to clean water, or if you do not have a safe sewer system, you cannot live in the house. And we have seen examples of that where relatives or people were living with relatives because they didn't have a working well system or acceptable sewer system. So in 2023, we repaired 25 wells, we replaced them. We replaced 17 septic tanks, and in the Snouting community, we connected 6 residents to the Mount Pleasant Waterworks system. Based on what I have been told, the larger project, the $12 million project with Mount Pleasant Waterworks that we're partnering with, they are on track to complete that in April of 2026. As far as what to expect from the department in the future, in the 4th quarter, we went out and we did a drive to collect applications. We have collected 250 applications. So for the rest of this year, probably a little into next year, we will process those applications and try to connect as many individuals that are near water or sewer. We'll connect them and, of course, continue replacing wells and septic tanks. The final group that I want to talk to you about tonight is part of the Housing and Urban Development Funds, the Urban Entitlement Program. As Mr. Rance said, there are some people that believe that the Housing Our Future plan was our first attempt at providing affordable housing for citizens. But actually, we've been doing this for 20, 25, 30 years by using the funds from the Urban Entitlement Program. With our emergency repairs, that's open to all citizens. Our critical home repair program is just for citizens that are senior citizens. But this one, the emergency repair program, is open to all citizens. And the way it works is we provide the funding to nonprofits, and then a citizen can apply to that nonprofit to have their home repaired. But what I think I'm most proud of and excited to announce is the Home Investment Partnership Program. Because at the end of the day, we are so interested and so dedicated to providing affordable homes to citizens. With the Home Investment Program, by partnering I saw Metanoia earlier, but by partnering with Metanoia and the city of North Charleston, 3 individuals were able to achieve their dream of owning a home. And I wanted to just show you the quality of the homes that these nonprofits are making for us. So here's
the 2 homes behind me for first-time homeowners. And so these homes sold to folks at or below 80% of the area median income who are strong working families that otherwise couldn't afford a place to buy a home. And it sort of begins a dream for them to build equity, to build wealth for them and their families. And so these homes were built and sold and wouldn't be possible without the support of Charleston County and North Charleston and the home funds that we utilize to build these kinds of units.
As you can tell, those are really nice homes. I wanted to end this update by going over 2023 and giving you the numbers, because often numbers are what's powerful. So council, you need to understand that you donated or you contributed $6.8 million to construct 181 affordable housing units. And most of those homes will open up in the earlier part of this year. We used $600,000 to provide clean and safe drinking water and sewer systems for the citizens of Charleston County. $2.1 million was spent to provide home improvements to senior citizens, the most vulnerable in our area. And finally, by partnering with Metanoia, we were allowed to give 3 families. We helped them achieve the American dream of having keys to their own home. I truly believe that 2023 was a good year. While the staff is pleased with our accomplishments from 2023, I want you to know that 2024, we expect much more of the exact same thing you're seeing today. So thank you, and are there any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Kabrowski.
Well, first, I want to thank you for your excellent report and all the hard work you've done in being able to keep people in homes that couldn't afford it and take the stress of the not knowing how to make ends meet. And that is something to be proud of in every possible way. My question is, and I listened carefully to what you said, that we have sold this as affordable housing, which most people would think the ability to buy a home or to rent a home, but we're really talking about subsidized housing, because there's hundreds of thousands of people who live in Charleston County. And I've heard you talk about tax abatements, uniform tax incentives for developers, and gap financing to incentivize developers. And my concern is for everybody that you mentioned, there's 377 new units through ARPA. You mentioned 77 apartments on UG Street, 70 apartments on Meeting Street, 120 home repairs. And through the incentivizing the tax incentives, I like to have those explained, because you incentive for developers to build affordable housing. My concern is that you've created a floor for everybody in Charleston County who wants to buy a home. You've made it more expensive. For some people, you've helped tremendously, and that's an unmitigated good. But to say it's affordable housing, most people think, what does it cost for the average person to buy a home in Charleston County or to rent one? And by incentivizing the developers to do this, you've given them the ability to charge more or as much as they want, and it creates an increase for everybody else. So it's admirable in every way that some people are benefiting. That's an unmitigated good. But to say that, most people think, and I don't want anybody to think that we've done something to bring the price of homes down or to rent in Charleston County for everybody else who's not being directly subsidized. And I want people to understand, because we're using taxpayer money, what do you mean by incentives for developers to build more affordable housing? What does that mean? How are we incentivizing them? Did they get the, because I asked this before and I never fully understood that they get to ask whatever they want to finish the project. What does it mean? What is the uniform tax incentive and tax abatement? And how are we, what are the incentives for developers to finish the project that they wouldn't develop otherwise? Who gets to say what those incentives are, how much, and do they get to ask whatever they want? And how is that bringing the cost of, for every housing unit that people come to rent or into buy in Charleston County, how does what we're doing now make it affordable? Again, my concern is we incentivize all the developers to do this. They can build up and build out. We created a a floor that they can now charge more to everybody else and actually increase what it costs to buy a home for those, or rent for those who are not directly incentivized. And I know in Charleston County, many of us have owned our homes for a long time. The affordable housing means be able to buy things at stores, stay in your home, live here, and pay your real estate taxes. And that is a struggle for people that may not be included in this to stay in their homes as real estate taxes go up. And if we created incentives, maybe for developers to finish this, but for everybody else, it's going to go up. It's not going to do anything for those directly not subsidized. And that, again, doesn't affect the unmitigated good for those who we have benefited. I'm asking how it doesn't create hardship for those who, the buy a home in Charleston County is so prohibitive now in the rent, and for everybody else not directly subsidized, it's not going to help them. It's going to be able to allow developers to charge more. That's my concern, and in no way to disrespect the hard work and the good that you've done. And that's, I ask it in that frame.
It's a philosophical, and maybe even an ideological debate as to whether or not it is the overarching purpose of government to provide, particularly for those who may not necessarily be advantaged in our society. And so that's a debate that all of us can, decide, subsidies for those who have been systemically left behind, and those who need equity in order to be able to be at a fair playing field with others who have had generations to be at a place that they could do things that we feel that everybody should be able to do. It's just a debate that we could have and we can talk about ad nauseum. When looking at the AMI, and so I don't know if these are questions necessarily for Ms. Smalls, but surely there is already, when you look at poverty indexes, when you look at average median incomes, these things have been set by the federal government. These things have been levied by other bodies that are not necessarily county staff departments. And when looking at the ability for entities like ours to play in this arena, we're not trying to be landlords, but we're trying to make certain that when individuals move here or individuals grow up here and decide to stay here and work here, that they could actually live here. When looking at the floor that you claim for it to be of affordability, right now, no one can afford to live in downtown Charleston. Looking at these Archer apartments and some of these other units that are coming on board, when you look at the overarching Housing Our Future plan, the plan already said that we were at a crisis level because there were so many units that needed to be added to the portfolio in this market in order for anybody, to even be able to keep up with the number of people moving here, wanting to live here in this region. And so those homes, based on the definition for affordability or workforce, or whatever terminology we decide to use. Some people say affordable housing, workforce housing, attainable housing. I think we need to decide on the language of what we're going to call it. But there are individuals who are regular people. I consider myself to be a regular person, who are teachers, pastors, hospital workers, county government employees, individuals who are not in the upper echelon of the tax bracket, who work every single day on good jobs but cannot afford to buy a house. And so even as you look at some of the programs that were put in place to enable, and you said subsidized, but there are some individuals who are in that middle category that really are not available to qualify for any program per se, because they have good credit, they meet the threshold of, being able to afford something, but then based on their debt, the income ratio, banks won't approve them. And so there needs to be something else that enables those individuals an opportunity. And surely county government has a prerogative, if it chooses, to fill that space.
I think you made some excellent points, and I agree. There's an affordability problem. I was talking about, we're going to vote on tax abatements and tax incentives for developers. And I don't know if the developers.
We do that every council
Gentlemen,
meeting.
I want
I'm
to make
sorry.
sure we
Thank
keep
you,
this
ma'am.
committee. I think both of you have been
To
heard.
define what a tax abatement and incentives are, because I'm not sure developers are in the category that you're talking about. Why are we giving them tax abatements? And my concern is that we're giving them incentives financially to build these things, which are good, but we're giving them then the incentive to charge more to everybody else because you created a floor. Are they in the categories of what Councilman Middleton is talking about, that those developers need these incentives to survive? Or why are we subsidizing them at the same time?
Mr. Grabowski, Mr. Durant.
Go ahead.
May I, if I may, for purposes of today's action, you are not going to be voting on the uniform tax exemption policy. That was what will be coming in the next month or so. What I mentioned was that the ordinance that you all had third reading on in December, the next step in that is the uniform tax exemption policy. But there will be more information that will be coming to you all. So that is not going to be part of the action that Ms. Smalls is going to pose to you today. Right now, what she's going to be posing to you are the action items related to the programs that you all have directed that we implement, and those actions to allow her to proceed with those directives.
Based on these tax incentives and tax abatements that
It
we're
is not.
giving?
Mr. Grabowski, I'm gonna just inject and say, we have adopted the Housing Our Future plan. All of these requests tonight are within that framework. If you are concerned or have a question, I would revisit the Housing Our Future plan. Part of it was to address a very simple supply and demand problem that we have right now. And so we've developed a system of working with public-private partnerships. These developers aren't getting any type of benefit. They're coming to the table and actually providing a service, and we're helping them do that in this process. But all of that is a directive we have given staff through the Housing Our Future plan. So I'm not trying to cut you off on this debate. Of course, I value your input, but I think we need to move on. Mr. Werman?
No, we can move on.
Okay. So before us, Mrs. Durant, have we gotten through the land banking and ATAX one yet?
First, Ms.
Okay.
Smalls is going to bring these council actions to this section, and then we'll go to land banking.
All right, so I think we're going to need a motion on items 2, B, C, and D.
Move to approve B, C, D.
Probably moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All noes. All right. That gets us through that section. Ms. Smalls, you want to
Yes.
move on to item E?
Yes, Eric Davis is going to take over with land banking.
Thank you, Ms. Smalls. Members of council, as Ms. Durant reminded you earlier tonight, utilizing and banking land to support affordable and mixed income housing developments is one of your top 2 priorities in the Housing Our Future plan that you identified already. In September, I provided you an introduction to land banking concepts, models, and strategies, as well as the important roles that community land trusts often play in land banking. Since then, I've continued research, and that included reaching out to national and regional land banking experts, including the Center for Community Progress. They operate the National Land Banking Network. And after talking to those folks and digging in, I learned a couple things. First, most formal land banks are focused on putting abandoned and blighted properties back on the tax rolls, back to productive use, with affordable housing often coming as a secondary goal. Secondly, they're typically granted special state legislation in their state that gives them top priority when properties go to delinquent tax sale. They don't necessarily go through that whole process for redemption and sale. After speaking with our delinquent tax officials here in Charleston County, what I learned is that, one, South Carolina in general has some of the most forgivable and flexible delinquent tax and redemption policies. And secondly, the private market's taken care of a lot of these vacant and blighted properties. Right now, the Forfeited Land Commission has one parcel that it owns, and it's completely undevelopable. It's all wetlands. So I've continued talking to peer organizations in South Carolina, including agencies in Greenville and Horry counties, and they're just getting started on land banking as well. In fact, they've been in some conversations with the Center for Community Progress as well. What I learned there is that we're really in our infancy in developing formal regional land banks for affordable housing. In talking with other local affordable housing experts and potential partners in Charleston County, I learned that they have great interest in this program and that obtaining land for their projects is one of the biggest obstacles in meeting their goals. So hopefully, as you can see, the Regional Land Banking Authority track is more of a long-term effort. We're going to continue to assess partner interest and potentially explore state legislation similar to other states that have formal land banks. However, to implement your directive in the short term, staff recommends starting up a land acquisition grant pilot program that would be partnership-based. We would utilize the expertise of local affordable housing entities in a couple of different ways. One, to design and administer the program, similar to what we're doing with gap financing. And secondly, like the Greenbelt program, we utilize our local experts to identify the best projects and bring those to us through an application process. We would anticipate this being a tiered program, which basically means that the number of units you could put on a piece of property would determine the amount of funding that would be available to you. Nearly universal feedback from those that we reached out to said this needs to be a streamlined review and recommendation process, and that's associated with the costs of holding interest in property, like contracts and exercising options. So we'll continue to work with our local partner to refine this last point, but we anticipate that minimally the criteria in the application process would include proximity to essential goods and services, evidence of site control, number of affordable units that could go on the lot with by right zoning, opportunity for consolidation of parcels for potentially future greater density for projects, matching funds and leveraging, and of course applicant capacity, experience, and past performance. So for us to implement this affordable housing land acquisition grant pilot program, we're requesting several actions of you today. Authorize staff to contract with a qualified partner to develop a pilot grant program to bank land for affordable housing that complies with ARPA guidance. Staff will then return to council with recommendations for grant awards and final approval of land acquisition projects. Allocate $2.5 million in ARPA funds to the program, and authorize staff to work with legal to develop and execute the necessary contracts to administer the federal funds. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions from the committee? Do we have a, yes, Mr. Worman.
Just briefly, so thank you again for this. I'm excited to see this come into fruition. You know, I understand it's in sort of the infancy stages, but we were the same place with gap financing, and I don't know that that is completely matured, but I think we're going to see that it has grown up a lot. So I'm excited for this. I guess I just wanted to clarify, and maybe this is sort of part of the program design, is it that we provide a portion of the costs to acquire the land and someone else holds it, or does the county hold the land, or is it some sort of special entity between the two that holds the land, or is that...
So you're
I'm
right.
just sort of curious.
That is something that'll be refined as
Gotcha.
we go. We don't anticipate the county holding the land. Perhaps our partner, that would be someone who operates county-wide, could assist with holding the land if that's advantageous. And then, of course, matching funds would be important in the scoring criteria process. So the more matching funds that someone's bringing to the table, that ratio with what they're requesting from the county would determine their score for that criteria.
Interesting. Well, like I said, I'm excited to learn more, but I'm certainly going to support this
Madam Chair?
tonight.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Who's going to present on 2F?
DCA Durant.
Thank you.
All right. So just as a reminder, the law regarding accommodations tax was modified in 2023. It designated that 15% of a county's accommodations tax could be levied or could be assigned to for affordable housing. Over the last few months, we spent quite a bit of time meeting with DOR, working with legal, sorting out the details of that legislation. We are now at a point where we have determined, since the large majority of our local A-tax, the large majority of our A-tax comes from local dollars, and that is the simpler program to implement. We are focused solely on our local A-tax dollars, and we are simply carrying out the elements that are spelled out in the law. Based on the conversations we had with the state, with DOR, we have determined that we are going to be able to calculate the first 15% based on our FY23 accommodations. Now, that's a distinguishing point because in order to take action to allocate money right now, we have to base it on a year's earnings. So using the FY23 earnings and then working from our accommodations tax fund balance, we are going to be able to ask you all, based on that 15% calculation, to allocate $4.15 million from the fund balance of accommodations tax, specifically for affordable and workforce housing. That would be the first piece. The second piece that we are asking for is to authorize staff to negotiate and enter into agreements with the South Carolina Community Loan Fund, contingent upon their board approval, to develop a designated trust fund for Charleston County. As a reminder, they were the Low Country Housing Trust that we funded back in 05-06. You've heard about that. They modified and expanded their reach through the state. They became a CDFI. We have been partnering with them to administer our gap financing money. And so we have developed a lot of processes and procedures that gives us confidence in their ability to continue this. They have demonstrated the commitment to council's mission and purpose. And then finally, and this would be contingent upon the execution of the agreement, we certainly will work with the loan fund, just like we did when they were Low Country Housing Trust, to determine what process we will need to use to keep council informed as to the use of that money. The accommodations tax, of course, the law is written to carry through 2030. So for now, we are taking this year at this time to take the allocation from our fund balance based on the 23 earnings. We will come back to you or answer any questions that you want as we develop those processes and procedures with the loan fund. I would mention that the oversight of this agreement is contingent upon two things: the Housing Our Future plan, which you all adopted, which gives us the guidance, and the accommodations tax law, which we are obligated to comply with in order to maintain compliance with the law.
Any questions, Reverend Middleton? Reverend Middleton?
Yes, so we talked about the law and the accommodations tax. Certainly you're asking for 1 year, meaning this year based on 2023's accommodations tax. So we're saying that each year, so that's not a one-time thing, right? We're saying that each year we could come back based on the calculation. So in 25, we can look at 24, and 26, we can look at 25, what has come in through accommodations taxes. So this is a way truly to enshrine affordable workforce housing or this designated trust fund in the county's budget, because we have accommodations tax funds that come in annually.
Mac, you want to take that question as it relates to the budget?
When we developed the 24 budget, we planned to use most of the money that was coming in on an annual basis. So we are using fund balance right now. In the near term, I would say that you could do that for multiple years. We would have to see if we could balance that if we get out further into the time frame.
Multiple years up to 2030, based on the law.
certainly is a loud cost. We would have to look at what we're funding out of accommodations tax to see how that balances. By using fund balance, we're not reducing anything else at this point. And it's something we'll think about, including in the 25 budget, which doesn't appear that that'll be a challenge. But as we move further out, if the revenues continue to match up with recurring expenses, there may not be a lot of headroom to apply to the affordable housing. But it's something we would need to look at as we do the long-term planning.
Certainly. I'll yield to Mr. Pryor.
Yes, sir. Mr. Pryor?
So Reverend Middleton basically asked what I was going to, but I'm going to ask it in a different way. So fund balance is for one-time expenditures, not reoccurring expenditures. So how are we going to, to his point, balance this? Because you can't continue to use fund balance to pay reoccurring expenses, and this will be a reoccurring expense every year. And so this is a one-time expenditure, but so are you telling me when the money comes in for next year's budget, we're just not going to take 15% off of the top, we're just going to wait to see what happens and then go back to fund balance? Because if we do, that's not what our policy says. Fund balance is for one-time expenditures only.
So
That's what I was always told.
It is. I would look at this because it's going into something that's construction related, that we might call this more on the one-time side rather than recurring. We've not figured this out for 25 yet. Our fund balance does have enough of a buffer there to possibly handle another year, at least in 25, from fund balance rather than impacting recurring funds.
So we'd be going away from our policy then?
We will certainly look at those parameters and not let the county dip into a financial concern as a result of
Right.
what's proposed by the administrator.
So, and my follow-up question would be, so 4.1, this is $4 million. What is our total accommodation tax that we took in for 2023?
Maybe I could answer it this a little easier. The fund balance that we had at the end of fiscal year 23 was
Not the fund balance, the total accommodations money we took in.
So this is 27.7 million.
All right, so out of that 27.7 million, we can't find $4 million. I mean, somebody's going to have to take the cut, some of these other entities. I mean, I think we need to get a spreadsheet, a list of the people.
We will work through that for your consideration as part of the 25 budget.
Right.
The fund balance at the end of 23 was $18 million.
Right.
So taking 4 out of that seems to be very
I got no
feasible.
problem with that. The problem I have is the reoccurring.
And Mr. Pryor, I think part of the issue here is this is a brand-new law. We did not in our 24 budget accommodate for these expenditures, so we can't reallocate once it's
I have no
accommodated.
problem with that, but what I'm saying for 25,
Right.
Fund balance can only be used for one-time expenditures, not reoccurring.
Right. But we'd have to allocate them in the budget, is what I think
Right. That's
Mr.
what-
Guile
it
is
has to be
saying.
allocated in the budget in order to make it work.
Right.
So since we know that, coming in the 2025, we would have to figure out, whatever we collect, 15% of that is going to be cut. So my suggestion would be is cut everybody 15% who's on that accommodation tax, cut them by 15% evenly across the board. That way nobody won't get cut more than the other. They all take a 15% cut to pay for this.
I think there's other ways, because some of our obligations are going to end eventually.
I was going
especially
to
if we
say,
pay up front.
perhaps for today, if we could focus solely on this action
Okay,
first, because I
fair.
do think some of those elements regarding the FY25 budget may be affected by what the outcome of the numbers for FY24 are. There are elements in the law
Okay.
that dictate what we can and can't do. If we could separate this from that, and we can certainly do some more work on that.
We can come back. And my final question on this, to you, Mac, is the bonds for the Cooper River Bridge. We pay, I think, like $1 million a year for 25 years. I think that's what's about to be up, right?
5 more years.
Is
5 more years?
$3 million a year.
$3 million.
And we do have a 5-year rolling plan that we
Okay.
manage for the local accommodations tax, and we will look at different alternatives and options to
All right.
to make this work.
Thank you. And Ms. Durant, so all this money that we got going out, Are we in jeopardy of leaving some of this money that has to go back to the government if we don't spend it by 2024? Of all this money going to be allocated?
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. That's a great question. As a reminder, for the ARPA money, the allocation is through 24, but we have until 26 to spend it. And so we're trying to be methodical to ensure that we've committed it per the terms of the federal regulation, but we can have our organizations continue to spend it up through December of 26.
All right, got it. So 2024 is when the allocation has to be done. And so between now and, maybe a couple of meetings, I'd like to see what do we have left and what do we think we need to allocate it for, because I don't want to send anything back unused, and we maybe can put it somewhere else into the program and make it work.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from council? Yes, Mr. Werman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And thank you, Mr. Ant, for all your work on this. I think this is a pretty big step, one which I'm certainly excited about. A lot of folks in our community have been working very hard to get a trust fund developed. And I think this, is the trust fund. I guess I just wanted to tick through just to make sure I understand the definition. I've sort of defined these things functionally in my own head, that it basically means, this is a place that funds can be designated, and it can no longer be touched. It's now sort of administered by someone else, and sort of separately, it's set up in a long-term way where it can receive funds from various sources. We can revolve stuff. So, am I correct in understanding that in setting up this trust agreement, it would be administered by the South Carolina Community Loan Fund, and it's not subject to recapture by council or reallocation by council once this $4.15 million is sent over? Apart from if they just breached the agreement. I mean,
Right.
I get that it is a contract. If they just breached it, we'd get the money back. But
I would say that part of our negotiation is going to involve our legal staff working with their legal staff to ensure the protections that are specified under how trust funds have to be managed in the state of South Carolina. And then we can come back to that.
So, yeah, because
Go ahead.
I would like to ask, would we just allocate the money as needed? I mean, they would allocate the money, but we wouldn't give them all the money one time, would we? I mean, if the money we set in a separate account, and then they would have to contact us and say, hey, we need X amount of dollars, how would that work? Because once you give somebody something, it's hard to get it back.
Let me think how to answer that succinctly.
You don't have to answer it tonight.
Right. Let us work with them and make sure that their board is willing to accept this and the work that goes with it.
I would like something set up the way they actually apply for it through us, and then we, like we do everybody else, stroke them a check under a contract. But we can answer that later, but,
Sure.
my thing is, once you give somebody something, it's hard to take it back from them.
Reverend Middleton.
Madam Chair, I move that we allocate $4.15 million from fund balance of accommodations tax funds for affordable workforce housing.
Per the recommendations of
The
staff.
recommendations of staff.
Is there a second?
I would second. I actually wanted to raise this issue as well. Some folks who I've heard from have asked that we have an opportunity to bring this agreement back. I've spoken with Mr. Ant about this extensively, and I'll just say for public record, I'm pretty comfortable with what I think we imagine the parameters to look like. It would take a monumental surprise for me to want to send folks back to the negotiation table after everything's been buttoned up. But that being said, I do sympathize and understand the position of some of our folks who've advocated for this for a long time, that it is hard to envision what this is going to look like. So I would certainly encourage folks, if you have comments, suggestions, input, to try and do that on Tuesday's public comment, because obviously it's going to be easier to incorporate that before folks go down and sit down and negotiate. But having some trouble sort of envisioning this myself, I do want to give folks the opportunity to do that sort of on a final reading basis, even though I understand that's not sort of typically how we work. So I guess I would propose an amendment to have the final agreement come back for council approval. Is that?
I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. It has never been the practice of county government to involve anyone outside of county government in our contract negotiations. So we're not suggesting we open the contract negotiations. Okay, I just want to make sure I understand what this amendment.
So the way I would envision this, and I think I have seen this on a city basis, is a basically agreed to informed contract would come back. It would say for final approval. That would be part of the public agenda. Folks could come in for a public comment period and say we think you all missed this. And so part of my thinking in this is, you don't know what you don't know, and I think the folks who might have some interest in this are having some trouble formulating, they would like to see it before they make sort of comments. Again, I would encourage everyone to put as much public input as you can on Tuesday, but given that, that's all I'd imagine. I'm not suggesting anyone be in the room negotiating this contract other than our legal staff and our staff who are experts in the field.
Well, I think we could definitely take it up on Tuesday, but for the purposes of the motion is for staff recommendation essentially here, and it's seconded. Can we vote on that and then discuss maybe what you have for Tuesday?
I thought it was my second, and I was saying I'd second it with that amendment, but...
Oh, conditional second.
Right, but that's too much. And so,
I could unconditionally second for discussion as chair.
well, we can consider it on Tuesday. I certainly support moving forward with this regardless, though, so I'm happy to...
Ever say aye?
Aye.
All
And folk will come and offer public comments regardless on any issue, even if it's not on the agenda. So that always becomes an option, and they can write in letters, send in comments, and those things are entered into the public record. Madam Chair, I move that we authorize staff to enter into agreements with the South Carolina Community.
We don't need a second motion. That first motion took it.
Like we...
Yep. Item 2F encapsulated all three, right?
Excellent. Thank you.
We got that record? Okay. That concludes our Special Housing Committee meeting. Thank you.
Ms. Honeycutt, next up is Planning and Public Works Committee, Mr. Moody.
I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Honeycutt as I have a...
Vote on the minutes?
I can handle that, Mrs. Honeycutt. Thank you. All members of council are participating. Item 1, motion to approve the minutes.
To approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Corrections, deletions, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Mrs. Honeycutt, item 2 for you.
All right. I'm going to take over chairing this meeting. I believe we have some council members who've put in the record their need to abstain. And so on the agenda at this time is item 2A. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make one. I would move for Planning Commission recommendation, which was disapproval.
Do I have a second?
Well, second, you're saying I want to make sure what the planning commission spelled out. I think
Planning Commission was, I believe, an 8-0 denial.
Right, I second Joe's motion, thank you.
Any discussion? Sure, Mr. Kraski.
Briefly, I strongly urge us to approve this, but I want to say that we saw the strong sentiment of the people that came out here, and I defer to the judgment of the people who live there. I think they all had valid reasons. I heard the comments of the representatives who represent that area. I commend them for organizing and getting the feelings out. And I would just ask us to be consistent with this in things in my district with the 10 Mile community when they had public comments and the people there felt just as strongly, and 100 people came out, and their way of life and what they love will be irrevocably changed with what we're going to do to the Historic Preservation Commission. I asked for the consistency in this. I heard the people, and I think I agreed with what the people came out and said, and I commend you, Jenny and Joe, for organizing those people and hearing their voices. And I asked to be consistent and respect the people in the Historic Preservation Commissions when that comes up. And also it shows the value of having public hearings on things, because the public hearing on this issue allowed people from both sides to come out and be heard, and we heard the community voice. And I would ask that we consider this in our tree ordinance, that what value public hearings have. They do play a role. And I would ask on our other issue with the tree ordinance, we reconsider and allow public hearings to continue. Having said that, I strongly believe that the show deference to the people that live there that clearly have said they don't want this. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yes,
Ms. Pryor.
The motion for denial I won't support, and I'll tell you why. I don't have to, but I just want to explain a few things. I think that the applicant went through the process. He met with the community, and and looking at this, just because 100 people show up, that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it fair. We don't know, whether those folks are permanent residence, or they just have a residence there because, most of these people live out of town, they're well-to-do. But I will tell you, I got emails saying it's going to be a Botox clinic and a Botox center, and that was further than far from the truth. But if we're going to start allowing folks to come in and, I wouldn't say bully us, but just come in and say we don't want it, and then we take their word and says, well, I want to vote for it because this is what the people say, then 526 be damned, because if the folks come out and says, I don't want 526, we know that the majority of the people wants 526, but the vocal minority comes out and says they don't want it. So, I just want us to be careful when we go down this slippery slope, because this could backfire and cause us a whole lot of headaches. So I think the gentleman has, scaled down the project. He's done some things, but some community members just don't want anything. They want it, but they don't want it there. And so that's why I'm not going to support this motion. But even if this motion passes, I would ask that they be allowed to come back within 1 year if they meet with the community and the community says, hey, they'll take a second look. That's just me.
Mr. Worman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would say that I'm not going to support this motion as well. I do want to distinguish, I've got maybe a little bit different concerns than my friend Mr. Pryor here. I do kind of take it as true that the majority of folks who've come out, I don't, discount those necessarily. And I was able to meet with some folks who spoke passionately about it and certainly made me consider a few things. However, as I explained to them, I do think there are still some benefits to the project in terms of sort of the broader economy of off-island trips. And I think, I do have some discomfort where what seem to be a lot of the, stronger arguments that folks are making, I have some discomfort. I don't necessarily disagree that traffic studies or current stormwater regulations may not always work. I have some discomfort in picking and choosing when we say that and when we don't. And I'm not saying that those folks are themselves picking and choosing. I'm saying that as a council, we have these regulations in place, and it makes me uncomfortable to sort of make that as an ad hoc decision. So, it's certainly a close vote, but I'm not going to support the denial motion that's on the table. But I just kind of wanted to make clear some of the reasons for that as opposed to some of the other reasons that folks have talked about.
Middleton, I want to give you an opportunity. Did you have anything first? Okay. Mr.
I just wanted to say we hold it in our hands as trustees of the county to cause people to lose something they love dearly from living there and irrevocably change their life with congestion and stuff. And I think as the vote to disregard what the people there want and how they want their community to be would be against what we should be doing. We are here to listen and respond and not take away and irrevocably change something that people love about where they live. We would irrevocably change the nature of that community if we approve that in the way that the people want to live there. So I strongly urge to pass this motion and deny that project. Thank you.
Mr. Boykin.
Just very briefly, just for the record tonight, I do want to reiterate the staff recommendation, who we put a lot of trust and confidence in, and their recommendation was the scale and intensity of the proposed development is incompatible with the existing land use pattern of the area and is therefore inconsistent with the comprehensive plan future land use recommendation. Therefore, staff recommends disapproval.
And if I misspoke earlier, I want to be clear that the vote of Planning Commission was actually 7-0 for disapproval. So that is the motion on the floor. Mr. Darby?
I just need to make my explanation. 100% of the times I have sided with poor communities and fighting against forced development, and I've chastised poor communities when they allow developers to come into their communities, which would ultimately destroy the communities. Number two is, I have given my word to the community prior to speaking to the developer, and that's where I'm conflicted as they did present valid perspectives why development should be accepted by the community, particularly the affluent members of Cuba and Seabrook, and perhaps I'll say more about them another time. I don't like to be used. However, I grieve because I was told that the developer spent over $4 million. And that's a lot of money. I was also told that they scaled down as low as possible, as well as the many changes. But because I gave my word, that's all I have to go by. And had I not given my word, I think I would have taken a different track. And I blame myself for not gathering all the facts as I should have. And it's going to, I'm conflicted with that, but since I've given my word, I have to go along. But I don't like to be used by those of the affluent. I really don't. And when I say affluent, I mean affluent whites. It's almost that they're only concerned about them and theirs. When we have problem with 10 Mile, we have problem with Snowden, we don't even see them. Nothing. They're only concerned about them and theirs. They're only concerned about their clan, their tribe, their class, their race. I don't like that. And then when it affects you, you have black folks to align with you to help resolve your problem. I'm talking about those who are affluent. You don't help others when we need. It's not just your community, but now you're only testing in terms of development. You're only testing what black communities have to eat and digest decades after decades after decade. But now that it's your turn, now you want alignment now. I recall a little story, it's a Bible story, and I'm not here to proselytize. It's called The Good Samaritan. A man was beaten and robbed, just beat up and robbed. And the first man went by was of the same race. Just walked on by. And I can understand, perhaps he thought the robbers would still be there and he would get beat up. The second man came by, same race. But he looked on the man, but I don't know if I can help you. I got to go. And then the third man, a Samaritan, who was a different race. Different race. And he looked at the man who was beaten and robbed and beaten. And he asked himself the question, what is going to happen to this man if I don't help him? And he went a little further and said, I'm either going to take you to the hospital. And not only that, I'm going to go a little further. If you can't pay the bill, I'm going to pay the bill for you. I don't see that with the affluent whites when it comes on the black communities. I don't see that altruism. I don't see. But now that you're testing it, how it feels to have somebody force themselves on you, now you want help. So I'm not going to be hypocritical. Now I'm not going to go fight for black folk because developers have forced themselves in, because I would be hypocritical and prejudiced to the point if I were to vote against this. Because whites have feelings too, including the affluent. But I'm saying the next time Snowden, 10 Mile, or any other community needs help, we need your help. When Single Member District came here, and Mr. Prime and Mr. Nabner got here, they had an incinerator in the middle of a black community. That sounds crazy. An incinerator in the middle of the black community. One white woman came down here, one, because she was concerned about people who didn't look like her. And we need to develop that. I can't worry about just what happened over in the black folk area, white folk, and vice versa. I studied Dr. King. I studied Gandhi. I studied Jesus the man. I studied Apostle Paul. Their components are love and forgive. So it's quite bothersome to me. So I'm not here to preach the gospel, but there's also another philosophy that I've learned. It's called Caribbeanism. It's my grandmother. My grandmother, she wasn't afforded education by the state of South Carolina because that's how socially bigoted at her time. She was born in 1887, so the state didn't afford her an education. And my grandmother gave me a quarter. I was 6 years old. That's a lot of money for a 6-year-old kid when I was growing up. You can buy bacon, rice, salt. And I gave Johnny White my 25 cents because he didn't have anything. And I thought he was going to give it back to me the next day, but he didn't. And I went crying to my grandmother, boo-hooing profusely. She said, boy, hush that fuss, boy, Buster, hush that noise. And she said these words I'll never forget. I was a 6-year-old kid, and her broken dialect. She said, boy, let me tell you something. If a Negro need once, Negro gonna need again. So I just want the affluent whites to know, you need me once, you can need me again.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Certainly, I am a preacher, but I'm not going to preach tonight. I would like to at least say, not necessarily, correcting anything, but the developer made application just like anybody else. They didn't force themselves, right? And if land is for sale in an area, anybody is able to come and inquire and go through the processes. And so certainly, I do recognize the urbanization and or gentrification and, excessive overdevelopment of certain areas. But at the same token, they didn't force themselves. They made application and they went through a process.
I would respectfully disagree with that because they would force themselves on them. If I had voted for this right here and 95% of the people didn't want it, and you give it to me and that's forced. So I just respectfully disagree, sir.
But somebody's going to develop the land.
Yes, sir.
The land will be developed, right?
Correct, sir.
It will be developed.
But at the same time, if the people don't want it, sir, if the people don't want it, it's forced on them. But you have your thoughts, and I have my thoughts.
I'm not contradicting you.
I think you are.
I'm not contradicting you. I'm
Gentlemen,
simply
Yes, sir.
offering a perspective.
Thank you, sir. I can agree with that, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
No further discussion. Are we ready for a vote? All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Kabrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Hey.
Mr. Pryor?
No.
Mr. Werman?
No.
Motion passes with 4 ayes and 3 noes.
Madam Chair, would this body be willing to allow them to, if they meet with the community and come back with something different, come back in a year and waive the fees? I'm asking for that in the form of a motion. Can I get a second? There's a second.
Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Pryor, do I understand your motion to be you're waiving the 1-year waiting period?
Waiving the 1-year waiving period and fees as well.
And the fees?
Yes.
Okay.
If they meet with the community and the community says, like they did with Andale West.
Okay.
Nay.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Nay.
Mr. Kabrowski?
Nay.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Motion passes 4 ayes, 3 nays.
Okay, that concludes the Planning and Public Works Committee meeting, and we'll turn it back over to the Chair for Finance.
Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt. This is a Finance Committee meeting. All members of council participate. First item, approval of minutes for January 25, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Moody, seconded by Reverend Middleton.
Yes, sir.
Any additions, deletions? Hearing none?
Recommendations to the clerk, please.
Always. Thank you, sir. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Consent
Move for
agenda.
items A through D on the
Second.
consent agenda.
Moved by Mr. Moody, seconded by Reverend Middleton, A through 2A through 2D. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Number 3, building ordinance revisions.
3A.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Pryor, seconded by Mr. Boykin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, move to approve 4A through E.
Second.
All right, moved by Reverend Middleton, seconded by Mr. Boykin. Any discussion about any, okay, Mr. Moody?
Just a couple of comments. I didn't feel it was appropriate to comment during the committee meeting I wasn't a part of, but Mr. Durant and team, just wow, well done. We directed you to go establish programs with organizations. You've done that. We directed you to go find partners, and you've done that. I tend to agree that our directive tells you to go do that. I don't know that I wouldn't support you needing to come back here and seeing us. We've told you we've given you direction, told you what to do, and you're doing it. But 180 units, $6.8 million, some people, Mr. Darby and I were chuckling earlier, some people will march in here and tell us this council's done jack squat with housing, and that is just a lie. That is an absolute lie. And for somebody to stand at that podium and tell us that, shame on them. Shame on them.
Yes, sir, indeed.
So thank you and your staff. And I guess I would make a comment to Mr. Kabrowski's questions is it's math. If you're trying to work with people that make 30 to 60% of the area median income, the math doesn't work. It does not work unless you incentivize a builder to come in and do that. The property's sitting there idle, it's making nothing. We have a problem when our workers can't live near where they work. It's a problem. And the math, again, just does not work if you do not incentivize somebody to come in and do that work. But the work that I especially appreciate, too, is keeping people in their houses. Mr. Darby and I talked about that. In most cases, a family's home is their generational wealth. Mm-hmm. And if they lose it, it's gone for generations. Mm-hmm. So to spend $20,000 to fix a roof or put a wheelchair ramp on or something, that's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. That's a really easy lift for this county. So thank you and your staff for all that you've done, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say, just to add on to Mr. Moody.
Mr. Darby.
In terms of this county, what it has done for housing, we are the leaders and we are the forerunners in this. Mm-hmm. And for someone to have the audacity to say that we haven't done anything, that's an affront. No county in Charleston County has done what we are doing. I think some in Greenville, they may have done this, but at this expense, in terms of the dollars that we've given, I would really have something to say about that.
Mr. Kabrowski?
Just to briefly respond to Mr. Moody, I think, as I said, it's an unmitigated good that some people now are going to be in homes they can afford. There's no question that to fix people's homes where they live and allow them to do it. My point was we're giving tax incentives and tax abatements to developers that's going to result in the hundreds of people benefiting. But for the hundreds of thousands of people who live here, we've established a floor that those developers can now keep on raising the rents, raising the prices that people pay. We have a problem here that the price for an average person to buy a home is astronomical. The rent, it's beyond belief. And what we've done is by incentivizing these developers and allowing them and giving them the benefit to do this, we created nothing to bring down the cost of homes for everybody that's not directly subsidized, which again is a good thing. That should be proud that we're building homes for people that otherwise couldn't. But nobody should be deceived that the overall affordability of renting in Charleston is impacted for anybody that's not directly benefited here. And that was my concern. As for people that live here and their children want to live here that aren't directly subsidized by what we're doing, it's only going to get worse by what we've done. And that was my concern that I expressed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir.
Disagree.
Mr. Pryor.
Mr. Chairman, and here's where I differ from Mr. Kabrowski. We're not incentivizing your developer. What we are telling the developer is, hey, look, if it's going to cost, $20,000 more, for you to make this affordable, we will take on this to make sure that it's affordable. When you say renting, we are trying to get the people out of renting into home ownership. Secondly, even people may say it's taxpayers' dollars, but these are government funds that were handed down during the pandemic. So if we didn't use these funds, you know what would have happened? It would have went back and somebody else would have used it, just like when Nikki Haley refused to take the Social Security money. Mm-hmm. And then 4 or 5 years later, she was crying about I woulda, coulda, shoulda. That's what we are doing. And so if we don't use the money, Mr. Kabrowski, somebody else will. Our taxpayers who are paying into this federal system, I will never deny them a chance to benefit from what they're saying to the federal government and never get back. So, you know, we disagree on that, but, I mean, it's not like you taking money out of your pocket and putting it in Mr. Darby's pocket. This money was sent to us during the pandemic. And so we're using it in a very productive way to help the least of the least and help some of these people move, just like doing the business loan. A lot of big churches, a lot of these daycares, colleges, they all took advantage of this. And so poor people pay taxes too. And so we need to help the least of the least, and if this is going to help us with home ownership, I'm all for it. Thank you, Mr. Rant, and your team, and I look forward to getting some information, how much money we got left, or we can't use it somewhere, we can put it toward this, because I'm just excited about where we're going. Okay, we're going to have 16 families that's going to be happy when these 16 houses get rebuilt and they get in there. I got the lady that lives over on, what street is that? Is that off, the street up off of Dorchester Road and Forest Hill? Is it always? So I'm there taking something to the church sister of mine, you know, because she didn't have a pickup truck, elderly, so I take it there. And so she says, that house across the street, I said, I already know about it. I've been hanging with the lady that lives next door. I said, if we're working on it, something's going to be done. Okay? And so she sends me a whole long text to say, well, I know you know about it, but when y'all going to do something about it? I said, soon and very soon. So thank y'all so much.
Mr. Warman.
Again, many thanks to our staff, and I bit my tongue earlier, but I just can't. I can't leave it be tonight, and I apologize for. Hopefully, this won't take too long, but to avoid too much time, I'm not going to address the fact that this is a moral issue. This is an issue of the fabric of our community. This is an economic development issue. This is an issue that spans all kinds of subjects, and that was eloquently stated by Councilman Middleton and Councilman Moody, so I don't have to even worry about mixing them up together in this particular time. I will say, though, that I just do not think the economics of this floor business pan out at all. What we are facing is a market failure, a market failure that cannot provide a sufficient supply of units at prices that are affordable to everyday Charlestonians and folks living in our region. And so the way these things work, and the taxes were not up today, but fair enough, these are gap financing. The way these things work are our staff, and soon the South Carolina Community Loan Fund, vet these deals to make sure that this is not some sort of icing on the cake of some developer's deal, that they're just being able to pencil these things out, as they say in the lingo, and so that there is a way to get these things into the market. You know, the scale of the crisis, the urgency of the crisis can't be overstated. It is not just by a matter of economics creating a floor that allows prices to rise elsewhere. The worst that can happen is maybe it doesn't help other folks. So, you know, we've got a fire going. The argument is, I guess, because you can't save everybody, you don't save anyone. I would push back against the idea that this can't save everybody. At scale, if these continue to build and grow, and we continue to grow these things at a reasonable rate, and you know, in the ways that I know we can, and so happy to see the progress of these programs. At scale, the private market's going to have to compete with these too. So, you know, I dispute the idea that this can't help folks who aren't directly part of the program, but I know that it can help our community. I'm so glad to see it moving forward, and I'm very happy to support it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt.
Thank you, Mr. Werman. I have to tack on to that because I have a little bit of understanding of the housing in our area. The average home price, new home price, is $398 a square foot. For a 1,500 square foot home, that is almost $600,000. A kid out of college that wants to move back to Charleston cannot afford a $600,000 home, and even if they could, they can't get the financing for it. So to say it's a math failure is absolutely correct. It is a failure the way the market is in our area because we have a supply and demand problem. Now, if you live in an area where the average home price is $7 million, you might not understand that need. But the need is extremely great. And what we have done is partnered with the private sector who are willing to take a haircut not make market rate on these deals and provide this to our community. And so to our team that has made this work and put these deals together in an extraordinarily quick timeline and turn this around, thank you. We appreciate your implementation of the huge task we gave you. You're doing a phenomenal job, and we'll continue to support you in that.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you, Ms. Durant, Ms. Smalls, Mr. Davis, everybody for your work, and everybody that's working on these projects. Y'all have done a fantastic job. A lot of details have gone into this, and thank y'all very much. We'll see y'all Tuesday.
We didn't take a vote, and we've got an HR committee.
Oh, that's right. We do have an HR committee. Darn it.
Not so fast, Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
We have to vote on that?
Yes, sir.
I thought we already did.
No, sir, there was a motion, and this was all discussion.
Oh, okay. So we had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Next item
I got you.
is our HR, it's the HR committee. Mr. Werman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item for business
Move for approval.
is the minutes of January 4th. That is moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved.
Before we go into executive session,
Yes,
and I'm going to make a
Councilman?
motion to go into executive session, but I would like to ask this question so the public can hear it, because some people's going to leave. We had advised staff to go back and bring us a policy about this leave, billing out for the folks who didn't get a part of the parental leave. Can anybody tell me where we at with that? Okay, can somebody tell me where we at, right quick? Because I know that was something big for us. We didn't want to incorporate it into the same thing, okay? So,
We can bring the policy in front of you. It's what I recommended in October, at what staff recommended in October. So that would be sick leave accrual to increase from 12 days to 20 days, which is 96 hours to 160, if you have your standard 40-hour work week.
Okay.
And then we adjust it based on the other work weeks. And then also, the annual leave accrual would revise from 15 days from 10 days for a new hire to 15 days for a new hire up to their 9th anniversary, and then it goes back on schedule again.
all right, so, Ms. Salisbury?
Yes, sir. I looked that up today, and y'all deferred that out of county council, so it can come back to the county council agenda
I would like-
whenever y'all are
I would
ready
like
for it
to be put on the next agenda, Mr. Chairman, for us to either move it forward or reject it. And also, I'd like to also begin talking again about those 3 or 4 entities that I had asked about, maybe some funding that we had available, for the grant. I'd like to discuss that at our next finance committee meeting, if we will, sir.
Okay, if you would make sure we know,
Ms.
the clerk
Salisbury,
knows
okay.
about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Move to go in executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, we're moving into executive session. All right, we are back from executive session where we discussed the administrator's contract and the council employee performance reviews. No action was taken, no votes were had. That concludes today's Human Resources Committee meeting.
All right, thank y'all all. See y'all Tuesday. All right, I'm out of here.